two giveaways really were the difference there in that first half, because I thought we were doing some really good things. But then we got that takeaway, had a takeaway negated by an offside.
But I do view him as somebody who could position himself to be that QB2. And if he's not in that position, but he's playing well, we know that the reason that would be the case is because they don't want people clamoring for Shedeur Sanders prematurely.
Dillon Gabriel was not better than Shedeur Sanders in minicamp when the rookies was there. He was not better at minicamp or training camp when the veterans was there. He did not perform better than him during the game he was in. And it's time out for people with the cap.
Kevin Stefanski has finally hit his breaking point, and it's obvious he's no longer convinced Dillon Gabriel is the answer. After another brutal performance, Stefanski didn't hold back, admitting Gabriel's play simply wasn't good enough. He even went as far as saying Dillon made some of the worst decisions of the entire game, especially in that nightmare second quarter. These weren't just minor slip-ups. They were momentum killers that left fans furious and teammates completely rattled. This feels like a major turning point, because when a head coach publicly calls out his own quarterback like that, it shows just how ugly and serious the situation has become.
Very good so far. And this one is picked off and going back the other way. The Eagles, Andrew Makuba. A pick six the other way.
After watching the game play out, it couldn't be clearer why Shedeur Sanders is the better choice. Dillon Gabriel struggled from the very first snap. No touchdowns, no big completions, and wasted opportunities even with the full support of the starting defense. His mistakes didn't just stall drives. They handed momentum straight to the other team. And instead of taking accountability for his awful showing, Gabriel acted like he was still in control, even throwing shade at Shedeur Sanders by calling him an entertainer instead of a real competitor. That kind of arrogance, especially after a disaster performance, makes you seriously question his mentality and whether he actually deserves to lead this team. Jerome Bettis didn't sugarcoat it. He blasted Gabriel's comments as not only unnecessary but flat-out reckless. For a quarterback hyped up as having computer-like processing, lightning-fast reads, and the calm execution of a machine, Gabriel's actions didn't match the hype. Rather than proving himself against tough competition on the field, he decided to take shots at Shedeur Sanders. And in doing so, he lit a fire with Sanders' massive and loyal fan base.
When it comes to being a supercomputer, he was only second to Skynet in the Terminator series. He is now capable of sending Terminators backwards and forward through time, waging a war with the Shedeur Sanders fans.
But here's the truth. This whole mess starts and ends with Kevin Stefanski. From the very first day of training camp, he's been blatantly unfair to Shedeur Sanders. Even though Sanders showed flashes of real brilliance, Stefanski refused to give him any first-team reps, keeping him sidelined while others got their chance. After that first game, when fans were buzzing about Shedeur's potential, Stefanski didn't budge. In fact, he doubled down, making it clear Sanders wouldn't see the field. Stefanski tried to spin it by saying his focus was on developing everyone, not just Shedeur, but the way he said it sounded more like an excuse to bury Sanders on the depth chart. And that's exactly where the controversy exploded. Now, let's hear his words for ourselves.
Yeah, pleased with Shedeur, pleased with the offense. Again, not perfect, plenty that we can work on, but I thought the guys did a really nice job of Shedeur and operating, the guys making plays, so again, a ton to teach off of.
And if Kevin Stefanski's earlier comments weren't already raising eyebrows, the latest reports have taken things to a whole new level. Word is Stefanski isn't even planning to factor Shedeur Sanders into the future at all. For fans, that's nothing short of shocking. After all the hype, all the flashes of potential, and the energy Shedeur has brought to the franchise, Stefanski still doesn't believe he's the guy who can deliver. That's a brutal blow, not just to Sanders' confidence, but to the faith of a fan base that's been begging to see him take over. So what does this really mean for Shedeur and the Browns? If the head coach himself doesn't trust his ability to lead, it plants a dangerous seed of doubt about his future with the team. And if that seed grows, it could signal a totally different direction for both Shedeur and the organization. Everything started pointing to one reality. Kevin Stefanski was actively killing the momentum around Shedeur Sanders. Reports even suggested Stefanski was the one pushing the false narrative that Shedeur had suffered an injury. That's when Stephen A. Smith jumped in and refused to let it slide. He directly called out Stefanski, accusing him of flat-out fabricating the entire Shedeur Sanders is injured storyline. Stephen argued this wasn't about protecting a young quarterback at all. It was about creating a convenient excuse to keep Sanders on the bench without igniting a fan revolt. The sudden talk of an oblique injury seemed to appear out of nowhere. And Stephen A. made it crystal clear he believed it was nothing more than a smokescreen, a carefully planned cover-up to keep Shedeur buried on the depth chart, even pointed straight to the Browns' depth chart as a smoking gun, calling it undeniable proof. To him, it was obvious the Browns never really intended to let Shedeur climb the ranks. If Sanders had been given the chance to build on the momentum from his earlier showing, there would have been no justification for keeping him sidelined. But instead, right when critical roster decisions were coming up, this injury magically appeared. The timing was just too perfect. An easy way to remove him from the conversation without sparking an even bigger controversy.
And that comes with going up against competition. Of course, second and third units and all of that stuff come into play. When you're the reigning defending Super Bowl champions, had he shown up this weekend and balled out again, playing 45 or more snaps like he did in the first game and putting up similar, if not better numbers, I think that would have boded very, very well for him.
And the driving force behind all of Kevin Stefanski's decisions seemed to come down to one thing: propping up Dillon Gabriel as the so-called hero. But that plan completely collapsed. Gabriel's performance was anything but heroic. He struggled from start to finish, failing to find the end zone or generate any real momentum. Even with the advantage of a strong first-team defense supporting him, his mistakes ended up being the most memorable part of his outing. No touchdowns, no highlight throws, nothing that convinced fans he was ready to take the spotlight. What made it worse, though, was Gabriel's attitude after the game. Dillon Gabriel's situation had gotten so shaky that even Kevin Stefanski couldn't dodge it when addressing the media before the next matchup. Although he started by stressing that the Browns were in a solid position overall, it didn't take long before he was forced to face the obvious: Gabriel's continuing struggles. Stefanski openly admitted that Gabriel was directly responsible for 2 costly turnovers, both the result of his own poor decisions, and those mistakes completely destroyed the rhythm of the game.
2 giveaways really were the difference there in that first half, because I thought we were doing some really good things, but then we got that takeaway, had a takeaway negated by an offside.
Kevin Stefanski has finally admitted his mistake of holding Shedeur Sanders back, and that admission changes everything. For weeks, he kept insisting Shedeur wasn't ready, hiding behind excuses about development, and even floating an injury narrative that Stephen A. Smith called out as nothing more than a smokescreen. But after watching Dillon Gabriel completely collapse under pressure, failing to lead drives and turning the ball over in the worst moments, Stefanski had no choice but to admit his approach may have been wrong. By keeping Shedeur off the field, he not only stunted the rookie's growth, but also robbed the team of the spark and momentum Sanders clearly brings. The breaking point came when Gabriel's struggles became impossible to cover up. Fans saw it, analysts saw it, and eventually Stefanski himself had to face it. His decision to force Gabriel into the role of future leader blew up in his face, leaving one undeniable truth: Shedeur Sanders deserves a shot. The young quarterback has already shown poise, accuracy, and leadership that Gabriel simply hasn't matched. For Stefanski, this realization is just as much about repairing trust with the fanbase as it is about fixing his own mistakes. Now the big question is, where do the Browns go from here? Does Stefanski finally let Sanders step into the spotlight and prove himself? Or does he risk alienating fans even more by doubling down on a narrative that clearly isn't working? The truth is simple: Shedeur Sanders has earned his chance, and delaying it any longer only hurts the team. Stefanski has recognized his mistake, but the next move will decide whether he actually fixes it or just repeats it. So what do you think about Kevin Stefanski in all of this? Is he really owning up to holding Shedeur Sanders back? Or is he just pretending now that Dillon Gabriel's failures are too obvious to hide? Do you believe Stefanski is truly ready to give Shedeur a fair shot? Or is this just another way to control the story? One thing is clear: the Browns can't hide from this controversy any longer. Shedeur Sanders deserves his shot, and the pressure is only going to grow. Subscribe to our channel for the latest updates, exclusive insights, and full coverage of the story as it unfolds.